The Discovery Doctor. Sarah Chen never believed in curses. She was a scientist, not a superstitious fool. But standing in the darkness of the Gobi Desert at 3 a.m., staring at the screen of her radio telescope, she felt something cold crawl down her spine. The signal was impossible. "Run it again," she whispered to her assistant, Marcus. Her voice shook just a little. Marcus typed frantically on his keyboard. The same pattern appeared. A series of pulses, perfectly timed, coming from deep beneath the desert sand. Not from space, from underground. "Sarah, this makes no sense. We're looking for signals from space, not from Earth. This has to be equipment failure." But Sarah knew better. She had checked everything twice. The signal was real. And it was old, very old. The frequency matched nothing in any database. It wasn't military. It wasn't natural. It was something else entirely. Something that had been broadcasting from beneath the sand for longer than human civilization had existed. "How deep?" Sarah asked. Marcus checked his instruments. His face went pale. 2 kilometers, maybe more. "Sarah, there's nothing down there. Just rock and sand. Nothing could survive that deep, and definitely nothing could broadcast a signal." But something was. The pattern repeated every 60 seconds. 23 pulses, a pause, then 3 more pulses, then silence. Then it started again. It wasn't random. It was mathematical, precise, intentional. It was a message. Sarah made a decision that would change everything. She recorded the signal and sent it to her mentor, Professor James Wright, at Cambridge University. Within 6 hours, her phone exploded with calls. Within 12 hours, the Chinese government had surrounded her research station with soldiers. Within 24 hours, representatives from 15 different countries were on planes heading to the Gobi Desert. The signal had also been detected by 3 other research stations around the world. One in Antarctica, one in the Amazon rainforest, one in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. All at the exact same depth. All broadcasting the same message. 4 locations, 4 signals, 1 message. Professor Wright arrived with a team of linguists, mathematicians, and archaeologists. They set up equipment in a hastily constructed facility near Sarah's station. The desert cold bit through their jackets as they worked through the night. "It's a coordinate system," one of the mathematicians announced after 8 hours of analysis. "The pulses represent numbers, very specific numbers. Coordinates to what?" Sarah asked. The mathematician's hands trembled as he showed her the map. "To each other. Each signal is pointing to the other 3 locations. They're connected. They form a perfect square across the planet. And in the center of that square..." He zoomed in on the map. The center point was in northern Iraq, near the ancient city of one of the oldest human settlements ever discovered. "We need to dig," Professor Wright said firmly. "All 4 locations, simultaneously," the governments agreed. Within a week, 4 massive drilling operations began. The world watched through news cameras. Scientists called it the discovery of the century. Religious leaders called it blasphemy. Conspiracy theorists called it proof of ancient aliens. Nobody knew what they would find. Sarah was at the Gobi site when they broke through. 2 kilometers down, the drill bit suddenly dropped into empty space. A cavity, a chamber, something that shouldn't exist. They lowered a camera on a cable. The images came back fuzzy at first, then cleared. Sarah gasped. It was a room, perfectly square, carved from solid rock with impossible precision. The walls were covered in symbols that looked like no language anyone had ever seen. And in the center of the room stood a pillar. Black, smooth, 8 feet tall. It was humming. The sound was barely audible, but the camera's microphone picked it up. A low, resonant tone that seemed to vibrate through the earth itself. The same frequency as the signal they had detected. "The other sites," Marcus said, checking his tablet. "They found the same thing. Identical rooms, identical pillars, all humming at the same frequency." Professor Wright leaned close to the monitor. "How old are these chambers?" The geologist on the team had been analyzing the rock samples. She looked up, her face ashen. "The rock that was carved away to make these rooms? The tool marks suggest they're at least 5,000 years old. Maybe older. But that's impossible. Humans didn't have the technology to dig this deep 5,000 years ago. We barely have the technology now. Then who made them?" Sarah asked. Nobody answered. The governments wanted to bring the pillars to the surface. Scientists wanted to study them in place. While they argued, something happened that made the decision for them. The pillars changed their signal. Instead of the repeating pattern, they began broadcasting something new. A different sequence, longer, more complex. And this time, all 4 pillars were broadcasting in perfect synchronization. A cryptographer from the CIA was the first to decode it. She walked into the command center at the Gobi site, her face drained of all color. "It's a countdown," she said quietly. "A countdown to what?" Professor Wright demanded. "I don't know. But according to this, we have 72 hours. The room fell silent. Through the monitor, they could see the black pillar in its ancient chamber, humming its mysterious song. Waiting. Counting down. Sarah felt that cold sensation again. The one that said they had made a terrible mistake. They had found the pillars. They had detected the signal. But had they discovered it? Or had they awakened it? In the center point between the 4 sites, in the ruins of ancient Ur, a shepherd boy was tending his flock when the ground began to shake. He watched in terror as a crack appeared in the desert floor. From deep below he heard a sound like something massive, taking its first breath in 5,000 years. The countdown had begun. The translation: the world didn't sleep for 3 days. Every news channel broadcast the same images. 4 deep holes in the earth, 4 black pillars, 4 ancient chambers that shouldn't exist, and a countdown that nobody understood. Sarah hadn't left the command center in 48 hours. Her eyes burned from staring at screens. Her coffee had gone cold hours ago. Around her, the greatest minds from every country worked in chaos, shouting theories, arguing over data, trying desperately to understand what they had found. "We should destroy them," a general from the Chinese military suggested. "Plant explosives, collapse the chambers, stop whatever this is before it's too late, and risk setting off whatever this countdown leads to." Professor Wright shot back. "These pillars have been dormant for 5,000 years. We woke them up by detecting their signal. Attacking them might be exactly what they want." "What they want?" The general's face reddened. "They're rocks. They don't want anything." But Sarah wasn't so sure. She had been studying the symbols on the chamber walls. There was something familiar about them, something that nagged at the back of her mind. "They're not just decorative," she muttered, zooming in on the high-resolution images from the chamber. "These symbols, they repeat. They have structure. Their language." A linguist named Dr. Yuki Tanaka rushed over. She had been studying ancient Sumerian texts her entire career. She looked at Sarah's screen and her jaw dropped. "That's impossible," Yuki whispered. "What? What do you see?" "These symbols. Some of them are Proto-Sumerian, the earliest form of writing ever discovered, but mixed with something else, something older, something that shouldn't exist." Yuki's hands flew across her keyboard. She pulled up images of clay tablets from ancient Mesopotamia, tablets that were 5,000 years old. Some of the symbols matched. "The Sumerians appeared suddenly in history," Yuki explained, her voice shaking with excitement and fear. "They had writing, mathematics, astronomy, agriculture. All of it appeared fully formed, with no evolutionary steps. Historians have always wondered where their knowledge came from." "You think these chambers are connected to the Sumerians?" Professor Wright asked. "I think the Sumerians found these chambers," Yuki said. "I think they learned from them, and I think they left us a warning." She pulled up a photograph of an ancient tablet covered in cuneiform script. It was called the Eridu Genesis, one of the oldest creation myths in human history. This text talks about a time before the Great Flood. It mentions 4 pillars that held up the heavens, 4 pillars that the gods buried deep in the earth because humans weren't ready for their power. The Sumerians called them the pillars of first sound, the sounds that spoke the world into existence. The room went quiet. "That's just mythology," Marcus said weakly. "Is it?" Yuki zoomed in on a specific passage. "Listen to this translation. When the earth was silent, the 4 spoke. When humanity learned to listen, the 4 fell quiet. But if humanity should answer the call, the 4 shall speak again, and what was buried shall rise." Sarah felt ice in her veins. "We answered. By detecting their signal, by digging down to find them, we answered." The countdown now showed 56 hours remaining. A commotion erupted near the main monitors. The team studying the center point, the location in Iraq between all 4 pillars, had sent through new data. The ground there was collapsing. Satellite images showed a massive sinkhole forming in the desert. It was already 300 meters wide and growing. At the bottom, cameras on drones revealed something that made everyone in the command center freeze. Stairs. Carved from stone, leading down into darkness. Ancient stairs that had been buried for millennia, now exposed as the earth literally fell away around them. "We need a team there now," Professor Wright ordered. "We already have one," an American colonel replied. "Special Forces unit. They're descending into the opening as we speak." Sarah watched the drone feed in horror and fascination. The stairs went deep, so deep. The soldiers' headlamps looked like tiny fireflies as they descended into the earth. "How far down do these go?" someone asked. "We don't know, but the ground-penetrating radar shows a massive structure below. Something big, something hollow." The lead soldier's camera feed came online. Sarah watched through his eyes as he descended step after step. The walls on either side were covered in more symbols, the same mix of Proto-Sumerian and unknown language that covered the chamber walls at the 4 pillar sites. "This is Alpha Team," the soldier's voice crackled through the speakers. "We've been descending for 20 minutes. Still no end in sight. Wait, I see something." His light swept across an opening. A doorway, massive, at least 30 feet tall, made from a single piece of black stone that matched the pillars. "Going through," the soldier said. What they found inside made the whole world stop breathing. It was a city, an entire city, buried beneath the desert. Buildings carved from rock, streets laid out in perfect geometric patterns, plazas and structures that suggested advanced understanding of mathematics and architecture. And in the center of it all, a pyramid. Not like the Egyptian pyramids. This was different, black, smooth, with no seams or blocks, as if it had been carved from a single piece of stone. "My God," Professor Wright whispered. "This predates Sumer, this predates Egypt. This might predate everything." The soldiers' team spread out through the city. Every building was empty. No artifacts, no pottery, no signs of life. Just empty stone structures and those endless symbols on every wall. "Sir, you need to see this," one of the soldiers called out. The camera turned toward the pyramid. At its base was an entrance, and from that entrance a light was glowing, faint, pulsing, the same rhythm as the countdown. "Do not enter that pyramid," Professor Wright ordered. "I repeat, do not." But the soldier was already walking toward it. His camera showed the entrance growing closer. The light inside was blue-white, unnatural. It cast no shadows. "Alpha Team, what are you doing?" the colonel shouted. "Fall back." "Can't." The soldier's voice came back, strained, confused. Need to go inside." "The call. Can you hear it?" "It's calling." His teammates tried to grab him, but he pulled away. He walked into the pyramid. The camera showed a vast chamber inside, and at the center, a 5th pillar, larger than the others, maybe 20 feet tall, covered in those same symbols, but these symbols were glowing. "The countdown," Sarah said, checking her monitors. "It just accelerated. We don't have 56 hours anymore. We have 12. The soldier reached out toward the 5th pillar. His hand trembled. "Don't touch it." Professor Wright screamed. The soldier's fingers made contact with the stone. Every monitor in the command center exploded with light. The signal from all 4 pillars increased in intensity 1,000-fold. Sarah's equipment overloaded. Speakers blew out. Lights shattered. When the chaos subsided, they restored the camera feed from Iraq. The soldier was standing in front of the pillar, motionless, his hand still touching the stone. On every monitor in the command center, on every computer, on every phone, the same image appeared. A star map. "That's our solar system," Yuki said, her voice barely a whisper. "But that's not how it looks now. That's how it looked 5,000 years ago." On the map, a dotted line appeared. It traced a path from outside the solar system, through the outer planets, past Mars, and ended at Earth. "Something came here," Sarah said, 5,000 years ago. "Something came to Earth." The countdown hit 11 hours. In the underground city, the 5th pillar began to hum, a sound so deep it shook the foundations of the planet. In the 4 chambers across the world, the other pillars responded. They were singing to each other, a song that had been silent for 5 millennia. And from deep beneath the city, from levels even deeper than where the soldiers stood, something began to wake up. Something vast, something that had been waiting in the darkness for humanity to finally answer the call that should never have been answered. The awakening Zara's hands wouldn't stop shaking. She watched the monitors as seismographs across the planet went insane. The 4 pillar sites weren't just humming anymore. They were vibrating, creating earthquakes that registered 4.5 on the Richter scale. Small enough not to cause major damage, but big enough to be felt by millions of people. The pillars are resonating with the 5th one, Marcus said, his voice tight with fear. They're amplifying each other. Look at the frequency analysis. He was right. The 5 pillars had synchronized perfectly. They were creating a sound wave that traveled through the bedrock of Earth itself. A wavelength so long that it wrapped around the entire planet. What's it doing? Sarah asked. I don't know. But whatever it is, it's powering something up. In Iraq, the Special Forces team had pulled their unconscious comrade away from the 5th pillar. But the damage was done. The soldier who touched it was alive but unresponsive. His eyes were open, but he stared at nothing. His lips moved, whispering words in a language no one recognized. A medic leaned close to listen. He keeps saying the same thing over and over. It sounds like they're coming home. Professor Wright assembled an emergency council. Representatives from every major nation appeared on screens around him. The mood was chaos. Some wanted to nuke the sites. Others wanted to study them. A few countries were already mobilizing their militaries. We need to shut this down, the American president said firmly. Whatever's happening, we end it. Now. How? Professor Wright shot back. We don't know what these pillars are made of. We've taken samples. The material doesn't match anything in our databases. It's harder than diamond, denser than any metal. Our drills barely scratched it. Then we use nuclear weapons and risk cracking open something worse. These pillars are connected to something deep underground, something we haven't even found yet. If you attack them, you might release whatever they're containing. Or we might destroy it. Or, Yuki interrupted, pulling up images on her screen, we might be playing right into their design. She showed them new translations from the symbols in the underground city. Her team had worked around the clock to decode them. These aren't just decorations. They're instructions, a manual, and I found something terrifying. She highlighted a sequence of symbols that appeared repeatedly throughout the city. This symbol means seal. This one means prison. And this one, she paused, her face pale. This one means they who were bound beneath. Bound beneath what? The British Prime Minister asked. Beneath reality itself, according to these texts. The ancient builders of this city, whoever they were, they didn't come to Earth to explore. They came here to hide something, to bury it so deep, in a place so isolated that it could never escape. What could be so dangerous that an advanced civilization would cross space to hide it on a primitive planet? Yuki's next image made everyone fall silent. It was a detailed carving from one of the building walls. It showed creatures, tall, humanoid, but wrong. Their proportions were off. Too many joints in their arms, too many fingers. Heads that seemed to fold in on themselves in ways that hurt to look at. The texts call them the Nameless Ones. According to this, they existed before light, before sound, before the physical universe as we know it. When reality began, when the first atoms formed and the first stars ignited, these beings were pushed out, rejected by creation itself. So they waited in the spaces between, the voids, the silence. This is mythology, a French general scoffed. Is it? Yuki pulled up the star map that had appeared when the soldier touched the 5th pillar. Look at this trajectory again. This isn't a travel route. It's an escape route. Something came to Earth 5,000 years ago in a hurry. Something running away. Professor Wright saw it then, the pieces clicking together in his mind. The civilization that built this city. They were refugees. They came to Earth because it was empty, primitive, perfect place to hide. Hide from what? From whatever was chasing them. The Nameless Ones. The countdown reached 8 hours. Deep in the Pacific Ocean, at one of the 4 pillar sites, something happened. The pillar split open, not breaking, opening, like a flower blooming in reverse. Inside was a hollow space, and in that space, hanging in midair with no visible support, was a sphere of light. The submarine crew that witnessed it went silent with awe. It's beautiful, the captain whispered. Then the sphere began to expand. It grew slowly at first, then faster. Within minutes, it had filled the entire chamber. The submarine pulled back as the sphere breached the chamber walls and began rising through the ocean floor. All stations report. The colonel shouted in the Gobi command center. Amazon site, the pillar just opened. There's light inside. Antarctica site, same thing. Some kind of energy sphere forming. Gobi site, pillar opening now. We're evacuating personnel. All 4 pillars were birthing these spheres, and they were growing fast. Sarah pulled up satellite imagery. The sphere in the Pacific had broken the ocean surface. It was now 100 meters wide and still expanding. It wasn't hot. It wasn't cold. Sensors couldn't even determine what it was made of. It was just light. Pure light that shouldn't exist in the physical world. The 5th pillar, Marcus said suddenly. What's happening in Iraq? The drone feed from the underground city showed something impossible. The pyramid was sinking. No, not sinking. Descending. The floor beneath it was opening up, revealing a shaft that went down even deeper into the earth. How deep does this go? Someone asked. The ground-penetrating radar operators looked at their screens in disbelief. We can't find the bottom. It's beyond our scanning range. More than 10 kilometers down. Maybe deeper. From that impossible depth, a wind began to blow. Up through the shaft, past the pyramid, out into the underground city. A wind that carried a smell like ancient dust and something else. Something that made the soldiers gag and retreat. It smelled like time itself. Like everything that had ever died and decayed and been forgotten. Professor Wright made a decision. We're going down there. That's suicide, the colonel protested. Maybe, but if we don't understand what we're dealing with, we're dead anyway. That countdown reaches 0 in less than 8 hours. I need to see what's at the bottom of that shaft. Sarah stood up. I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. You need someone who understands the signal technology. The pillars are machines, Professor. Alien machines. You need me, he wanted to argue. But she was right. 20 minutes later, Sarah was on a military transport plane heading to Iraq. She had never been more terrified in her life. The 4 light spheres continued to grow. They were now visible from space. 4 perfect orbs of light at the exact points where the pillars had been buried. Scientists around the world struggled to explain them. Religious leaders called them signs of the apocalypse. Regular people just stared up in wonder and fear, and the countdown kept ticking. 7 hours. Sarah arrived at the underground city to find it transformed. The military had set up lights and equipment throughout the ancient streets. Scientists worked frantically to document everything before whatever was coming arrived. She stood at the edge of the shaft, looking down into darkness so complete it seemed to swallow her headlamp beam. There's a staircase, a soldier told her. It spirals down along the walls. We've sent drones. They lost signal after 5 kilometers. Then we go until we can't go anymore, Professor Wright said, arriving beside her in climbing gear. They descended. Sarah, Professor Wright, Yuki, Marcus, and a team of 6 soldiers. Down and down and down. The symbols on the walls became different the deeper they went. More complex, more disturbing. The images showed the same creatures, the nameless ones, but here they were depicted differently. Not as prisoners, as rulers. After 3 hours of climbing, they reached something new. A door. It was massive. 50 feet tall. Made from the same material as the pillars. And it was opening. Slowly. Centimeter by centimeter. An opening just wide enough for a person to slip through. The countdown. Marcus checked his watch. 4 hours left. When it hits 0, Yuki said, reading the symbols around the door, this opens completely. What's behind it? She pointed to a final carving. It showed the earth, and around it dozens of those wrong, impossible figures, the nameless ones. And beneath the carving, a single phrase that Yuki translated with a trembling voice. The silence ends. They come home. Reality breaks. Sarah stepped toward the gap in the door. She could feel something on the other side, not heat, not cold, just presence, something aware, something vast, something that had been waiting in the darkness for 5,000 years. Waiting for someone to answer the call. She raised her light and looked through the gap. What she saw would haunt her for the rest of her life. Oh God, she whispered. They're not locked in there. What? Professor Wright asked. Sarah turned to him, her face white with horror. We're not keeping them out. The pillars aren't a prison. They're a lock, a seal. We're what's keeping them in where? Sarah pointed down past the door, down into the darkness below, in reality itself. They've been trying to break through for billions of years. This civilization trapped them at a weak point where the fabric between dimensions is thin. Right here, under a rock, under ancient Sumer. The cradle of civilization wasn't chosen randomly. It was chosen because this is where the walls between worlds are weakest. And we just unlocked the door, Professor Wright whispered. The countdown reached 3 hours. Somewhere in the darkness beyond the door, something laughed, a sound like stars dying, like the last gasp of heat before the universe grows cold. The nameless ones were coming home, and Earth was about to learn what true silence sounded like. The truth beneath, the gap in the door was growing. Sarah watched in horror as the massive stone panels crept apart, millimeter by millimeter, revealing more of the darkness beyond. And in that darkness, shapes were moving. "We need to close it," she said. "Now before it's too late." "How?" Marcus asked. "We don't even know how it opens, let alone how to close it." Professor Wright was studying the symbols around the doorframe. His headlamp beam traced patterns that repeated, spiraled, interconnected. "It's not random. None of this is random. These symbols, they're not just language. They're mathematics. They're a formula." Yuki joined him, her eyes scanning rapidly. "He's right. Look, this sequence here represents prime numbers. This one is pi. This one is..." She paused. "This one is the golden ratio, but backwards, inverted. What does that mean? I don't know. But the civilization that built this, they were trying to tell us something. They left instructions." One of the soldiers suddenly grabbed his helmet. "Sir, command is hailing us. Emergency broadcast." A crackling voice came through the radio. It was the colonel back at the Gobi base. "Professor Wright, the spheres have stopped growing. They're each about 2 kilometers in diameter now. But something new is happening." "What?" "They're projecting images into the sky above them. We're seeing things that can't be real." Sarah's tablet pinged with incoming video feed. She opened it and felt her stomach drop. The sphere in the Pacific was displaying something in the air above it. Like a hologram, but solid, real, tangible. It showed a planet, not Earth, somewhere else, somewhere beautiful. Cities of impossible architecture reached toward purple skies. Beings moved through those cities, tall and graceful. Not human, but not the horror creatures from the carvings either. These were something else. "That's them," Yuki breathed. "The civilization that built this place. That's their homeworld." As they watched, the scene changed. The sky turned black. Not night. Something worse. A void opening in the heavens. And from that void, shapes began to pour out. The nameless ones. Dozens of them, hundreds. They fell upon the cities like a plague. "It's showing us what happened," Professor Wright said. "Why they came to Earth. The beautiful cities burned. Not with fire, with something that erased them from existence. The elegant beings fought back with weapons that bent light and shattered space itself. But it wasn't enough. The nameless ones kept coming. Endless, infinite. The scene shifted. A fleet of ships, massive, desperate, fleeing into space, running from their dying world. And behind them, the void followed. Growing, consuming, erasing reality as it spread. "They couldn't stop them," Sarah whispered. "So they ran. Across galaxies, across dimensions, looking for a way to trap them, to seal them away. And they chose Earth," Marcus said. "But why?" Yuki pointed to the symbols. "Because Earth was perfect, young. The planet's core was still molten and active. Strong magnetic field, thick atmosphere. And most importantly, it was far from their home, far from everything. If they failed, if the nameless ones broke free, they would be stranded in the middle of nowhere. They used Earth as a prison," Professor Wright said slowly. "They found this weak point in reality, this thin place where dimensions touched, and they sealed it. The 4 pillars aren't communication devices. They're anchors, holding the door shut." "Then what's the 5th pillar?" Sarah asked. "The one in the pyramid?" No one answered. They didn't need to. Sarah knew. The 5th pillar was the key, the failsafe, the emergency release. "They left us a way out," she said. "If something went wrong, if the seal started to fail, they left instructions on how to safely open it, reset it, or what?" She looked at the door. at the gap that was now wide enough for 3 people to walk through side by side, or let them out. If containment became impossible, they left a way to evacuate Earth, to run, like they did. The countdown reached 2 hours. The images from the spheres changed again. This time they showed the Earth, 5,000 years ago, the refugees landing, the frantic construction of the underground city, the placement of the 4 pillars at exact coordinates around the globe, mathematical precision that would make modern engineers weep. Then they showed the ceiling, the refugees working together, pouring all their technology and knowledge into one final act. They opened the thin place in reality. They lured the nameless ones through, hundreds of them, thousands, maybe all of them, following their prey into the trap, and then they sealed it. The scene showed what it cost them. The refugees burned their ships for fuel. They cannibalized their technology to power the pillars. They gave everything they had to make sure the seal would hold. Sarah watched as the refugees, now stranded on a primitive Earth, began to die. Not from violence, from despair, from having sacrificed everything. The last few survivors climbed back to the surface. They emerged in ancient Mesopotamia. They found humans, primitive, but alive, curious. That's it, Yuki said, tears streaming down her face. That's where the Sumerians got their knowledge. The last survivors taught them writing, mathematics, astronomy, everything. They gave humanity the tools to build civilization, hoping we would eventually understand the warning. But we didn't, Marcus said bitterly. We thought it was mythology. We thought the stories about the pillars and the sleeping gods were fairy tales. A sound echoed from beyond the door. Deep, resonant, wrong. It made Sarah's teeth ache. It made her bones vibrate. It was the sound of something that shouldn't exist, trying to exist anyway. The seal is failing, Professor Wright said. After 5,000 years, it's finally breaking down. That's why the pillars activated. They were warning us. Then why did they lock? Sarah asked. Why did detecting their signal trigger the countdown? A soldier near the door suddenly screamed. He stumbled backward, clawing at his helmet. Get it out. Get it out of my head. His teammates grabbed him. He was bleeding from his nose, from his ears. They're in my mind, he gasped. They're showing me things. Things that never were. Things that can't be. Professor Wright checked the symbols again, frantically. We answered the call. That's what we did wrong. The signal was a warning, yes. But it was also a test. A test to see if we were ready. If we understood. Ready for what? To make the choice. He pointed to a sequence of symbols. These instructions, they're not about closing the door. They're about opening it. Fully, completely, releasing everything inside. That's insane, Marcus shouted. That would doom us all. Maybe, Professor Wright said quietly. Or maybe it's mercy. Look, he showed them another carving, hidden, easy to miss. It showed the Earth cracking, breaking apart, the seal failing catastrophically, the nameless ones erupting out in an explosion of unreality that would shatter the planet itself. If the seal breaks naturally, we all die, he said. The backlash would destroy everything. But if we open it, if we release them deliberately in a controlled manner, we might survive. Might? Sarah asked. The refugees couldn't stop them. What chance do we have? None, a new voice said. They all spun around. The soldier who had touched the 5th pillar was standing at the bottom of the spiral staircase. But he wasn't unconscious anymore. He was standing straight. His eyes were open, but they weren't his eyes anymore. They glowed with the same blue-white light as the pillars. You speak their language, Yuki said. I speak all languages, the soldier said in a voice that sounded like multiple people talking at once. I am what's left of them, the last consciousness. The final refugee. I've been waiting in the 5th pillar for someone to listen, someone to understand. What do we do? Sarah asked. How do we stop this? You can't stop it. The seal is breaking. It was always going to break. We built it to last 5,000 years. No more. We gave humanity time. Time to grow, to learn, to evolve, hoping you would be ready when this day came. Ready for what? The possessed soldier smiled sadly. To run, like we did, or to fight, unlike us. The countdown reached 1 hour. The door was now fully open. Beyond it, Sarah could see the void. It wasn't darkness. Darkness is the absence of light. This was the absence of everything. And in that nothing, the nameless ones waited. Thousands of them, pressed against the final barrier. A membrane so thin it might as well not exist. In 1 hour that barrier fails, the soldier said. When it does, they break through. Earth ends. Reality in this region of space ends. The void spreads. Within 100 years, it consumes the solar system. Within 1,000,000 years, the galaxy. Given enough time, everything. Then what do we do? Professor Wright demanded. The soldier looked at them with ancient, sad eyes. You do what we could not. You fight. We gave you the tools. The knowledge, buried in your civilization, hidden in your myths and legends. You have 5,000 years of human innovation, science, technology, war. You have something we never did. What? You have a reason to stand your ground. This is your home. Fight for it. The countdown reached 45 minutes. Sarah looked at her team, at Marcus, her loyal assistant, at Yuki, the brilliant linguist, at Professor Wright, her mentor, at the soldiers who had followed them into the depths. Then we need to tell the world, she said. Everything. The truth, all of it. If we're going to fight, we need everyone to know what we're fighting for. She turned to the radio. Command, this is Dr. Chen. Broadcast this on every channel. Every frequency, every language. Humanity needs to know what's coming. The colonel's voice crackled back. Dr. Chen, we're ready. You're live to the world in 30 seconds. Sarah took a deep breath. Above ground, across the planet, every television screen flickered. Every radio interrupted its program. Every phone buzzed with an emergency alert. Billions of people stopped what they were doing and listened. My name is Dr. Sarah Chen, she began, her voice steady despite her terror. What I'm about to tell you will sound impossible. But every word is true. 5,000 years ago, Earth became a prison, not for criminals, for something worse, something that exists outside of reality itself. They're called the Nameless Ones, and in less than an hour they're breaking free. She explained everything. The pillars, the underground city, the refugee civilization, the seal that was failing, the countdown that couldn't be stopped. The beings who imprisoned these creatures gave us time, 5,000 years to grow, to build, to become strong enough to face what they couldn't. They're gone now. We're alone, but we're not helpless. We have something they didn't have. We have home. Around the world, people listened in stunned silence. In Tokyo, a mother held her children close. In New York, a CEO left his office and went home. In a small village in Kenya, an old man nodded slowly, as if he had always known this day would come. I won't lie to you, Sarah continued. I don't know if we can win. I don't know if we can even survive. But I know we have to try. Because if we don't, everything ends. Not just humanity. Everything. The void will spread until there's nothing left but silence. She paused, gathering her courage for what came next. To every scientist, every engineer, every soldier, every person listening, we need you. The 4 pillars are generating spheres of energy. We believe those spheres are weapons, tools the refugees left us. We need to understand them, control them, turn them against what's coming. We have 40 minutes. 40 minutes to figure out how to fight something that destroyed an entire civilization far more advanced than ours. The countdown hit 35 minutes. Professor Wright was working frantically on the symbols. There's more here. Instructions we missed. These formulas, they're not just mathematics. They're quantum physics, string theory, concepts we're only beginning to understand. Yuki helped him, her fingers tracing the ancient carvings. They're showing us how they built the pillars. The material, it's not from our dimension. They brought it from somewhere else, somewhere where matter behaves differently. Can we replicate it? Marcus asked. In 40 minutes? No, in 40 years, maybe. The possessed soldier spoke again, the ancient consciousness inside him watching them with something like hope. You don't need to replicate it. You need to use what's already here. The spheres, they're not just energy. They're doorways, portals. Portals to what? To the same place we came from. The dimension where matter is stronger, where physics works differently, where the nameless ones can't exist. Sarah understood. You want us to run, to evacuate Earth through those portals. Not run, relocate. The spheres can transport matter. All of humanity, the entire biosphere if you work fast enough. You can rebuild on the other side, safe, protected. And leave the nameless ones here. They'll still spread, still consume everything. Not if you collapse the portal behind you. Seal this dimension off. Trap them here. It will take them billions of years to break through again. By then, you'll be ready, or they'll have burned out trying. It was a solution. A way to survive. But Sarah saw the cost. Earth, their home. Every mountain and ocean. Every forest and desert. Every city and village. All of it abandoned. Given to the void. No, she said quietly. What? Marcus stared at her. Sarah, this is our only chance. We have another option, she said, her mind racing. The spheres are doorways to a dimension where the nameless ones can't exist. What if we don't go through? What if we bring that dimension here? Professor Wright's eyes widened. Merge the dimensions, overlay them, change the fundamental physics of our reality to match theirs. Would that kill us? A soldier asked. Maybe, probably. Our bodies are made for this reality. Change the rules and who knows what happens. But the nameless ones would definitely die, Sarah said. They can't exist in that dimension. That's why the refugees were safe there. The possessed soldier tilted his head, considering. It's never been attempted. The energy required would be immense. You'd need to overload all 4 pillars simultaneously. Push them past their safety limits. The feedback could destroy the planet. Could, not would, Sarah said. What's the percentage? I don't know. 60% chance of destroying Earth. 30% chance of partial dimensional merger, which would still kill most life. 10% chance of success. And if we run through the portals, 90% survival rate for those who make it through. But you'd only save a fraction of humanity, maybe a few million, maybe less. And you'd be refugees forever like we were. The countdown hit 20 minutes. Sarah looked at her team. We need to vote. Do we save some of us or risk all of us? Marcus spoke first. I say we fight. My family is in Beijing. I'm not leaving them behind, Yuki nodded. My grandmother always said, a tree that abandons its roots will die even if transplanted. We stay. The soldiers agreed one by one. Professor Wright was last. I've studied the stars my whole life, he said. Always wondered if we'd find something out there. Now we have, and I'll be damned if I let them take our home. Sarah smiled despite her fear. Then we fight. Command, are you hearing this? Copy that, Dr. Chen, the colonel replied. What do you need? Contact every nuclear power on Earth. We need to coordinate a simultaneous strike on all 4 pillar locations. Not to destroy them, to overload them. We're going to use nuclear weapons to jumpstart a dimensional merger. You realize that's insane? Completely. But we're out of sane options. Get the weapons in position. We'll transmit the exact coordinates and timing. Everything has to hit within a 1-second window, or this doesn't work. Around the world, military commanders scrambled. Missiles were armed. Submarines moved into position. Bombers took off. Humanity had spent 70 years building weapons capable of destroying the world. Now they would use them to save it. The countdown hit 15 minutes. In the underground city, something changed. The barrier beyond the door began to shimmer, to weaken. The nameless ones sensed it. They pressed forward. Sarah could see them clearly now. They were wrong in ways that hurt to perceive. Too many limbs and impossible configurations. Faces that folded into dimensions that shouldn't exist. Bodies that were somehow both solid and void at once, and they were aware. Intelligent. Hungry. They know what we're planning, the possessed soldier said. They're trying to break through early. They're using their presence to weaken the barrier faster. How long do we have? 10 minutes. Maybe less, and we need more time, Sarah shouted into the radio. Can we speed up the missile deployment? We're working as fast as we can, Dr. Chen. But coordination across multiple nations takes time. We need at least 12 minutes. They didn't have 12 minutes. Professor Wright had an idea. The 5th pillar. It's a control mechanism. What if we could use it to reinforce the barrier? Buy us more time? How? He pointed to the symbols. These formulas, they describe how to channel energy into the pillars. We'd need a power source. Something significant. Sarah looked around. No generators. No equipment. Nothing but rock and ancient stone. Then she looked at the possessed soldier, at the consciousness inside him. You, she said. Your energy. Pure consciousness maintained by the 5th pillar. What if you channeled yourself into the barrier? The soldier's eyes widened, not with the alien consciousness, with his own awareness surfacing for a moment. That would kill me, permanently, no coming back. I know, Sarah said softly. I'm sorry, but we need those extra minutes. The soldier was quiet. Then he smiled. His own smile. I joined the military to protect people. Guess this is the ultimate version of that, huh? The ancient consciousness spoke through him one last time. Thank you. For fighting. For not running. You are worthy of this world. Then the soldier walked to the fifth pillar. He placed both hands on it. The glow intensified. His body began to fade, becoming translucent. The energy inside him was flowing into the pillar, through the connection, directly into the failing barrier. Sarah watched as the barrier solidified. The shimmer stopped. The nameless ones pushed against it, but it held. The soldier looked back at them, already more ghost than man. Make it count, he whispered. Then he was gone, consumed, transformed into pure energy, holding back the void. The countdown hit 10 minutes. Missiles are in position, the colonel reported. All nations confirmed, awaiting your signal. Professor Wright and Yuki had finished the calculations. They transmitted the coordinates to every missile commander. 4 points on Earth, 4 pillars, all to be hit at the exact same moment with the exact same force. What happens after the missiles hit? Marcus asked. If we're right, the pillars will overload, Professor Wright explained. They'll draw energy from the dimension they're connected to. The spheres will expand rapidly, merging our dimension with theirs. The physics will change. Matter will behave differently. Time might flow differently. We might not even recognize our world when it's done. But we'll be alive? Probably. Maybe. I honestly don't know. The countdown hit 5 minutes. Sarah thought about her life, her research, her dreams of finding signals from distant civilizations. She had found them. Just not the way she expected. She thought about her family, her friends, everyone on Earth who would be affected by what happened next. Launch the missiles, she ordered. Around the world, fire bloomed in the sky. Nuclear weapons streaked toward their targets. In the Pacific, in the Amazon, in Antarctica, in the Gobi Desert. Humanity's most destructive weapons, repurposed for salvation. The countdown hit 3 minutes. The possessed soldier's sacrifice was weakening. The barrier began to shimmer again. The nameless ones sensed victory. They pushed harder, thousands of them. A wall of impossible shapes and void stuff, pressing against reality itself. 2 minutes. The first missile hit the Pacific pillar. The explosion was massive, but instead of destroying the pillar, the energy was absorbed. The sphere of light contracted, then exploded outward, growing, accelerating. 1 minute. The other missiles hit, one after another. Gobi, Amazon, Antarctica. Each pillar drank the nuclear fire and transformed it into something else. The spheres grew together, reaching toward each other across the planet. 30 seconds. The barrier failed. The door opened completely. The nameless ones poured through, and then the 4 spheres connected. Sarah felt reality twist. The laws of physics screamed. Gravity inverted for a moment, then stabilized. Light bent at wrong angles. Time stuttered. The nameless ones shrieked. A sound that wasn't really sound, but pure agony, transmitted directly into every mind on Earth. They had broken through. They had reached reality, and reality had changed the rules on them. In the new merged dimension, they couldn't exist. Their forms, designed for the void between universes, began to unravel. They burned, not with fire, with existence itself. The act of being in this new reality was destroying them. They tried to retreat, but the door was collapsing. The underground city was imploding. The seal, its purpose fulfilled, was finally breaking down completely. They were trapped, caught between dimensions, exposed to a reality that rejected them, one by one. They winked out, erased, unmade. The nameless ones, ancient and terrible, discovered what it meant to die. Sarah watched through the collapsing doorway as the void emptied. The thousands of creatures vanished like nightmares at dawn. The barrier dissolved. The connection between dimensions sealed permanently. Then the underground city began to fall. Run, Professor Wright shouted. They ran, up the spiral staircase. Up and up and up. 2 kilometers of climbing while the world shook apart below them. Behind them the city collapsed. The pyramid sank into the earth. The doorway sealed itself with stone and time and forgetting. They reached the surface as the sun rose over Iraq. The ground stopped shaking. The spheres of light faded. The four pillars went silent. Across the world, people emerged from shelters and hiding places. They looked at the sky. It looked the same. They looked at their hands. They felt the same. Reality had changed, but subtly. So subtly that only the most sensitive instruments would detect it. Humanity had survived. Sarah collapsed on the sand, gasping. Professor Wright sat beside her. Marcus and Yuki joined them. They were covered in dust and blood and exhaustion. Did we win? Marcus asked. Sarah looked at the sunrise. It was beautiful. Yeah, she said. I think we did. The countdown had ended. Not in destruction, but in transformation. Earth had become something new. A hybrid reality. A place where the nameless ones could never exist. A place forever protected from the void. But Sarah knew the truth. The war wasn't over. It had just begun. The refugees had left other warnings. Other hidden messages. This wasn't the only weak point in reality. There were others. And other things in the void. Other threats waiting for their chance. Humanity had won this battle. But they would need to stay vigilant. Stay strong. Stay together. Because the universe was far stranger and more dangerous than anyone had imagined. And Earth was now on the front line. The new silence. 6 months later, Sarah stood in front of the United Nations Assembly. The room was packed. Every nation on Earth had sent representatives. Everyone wanted to hear what the team had discovered in the ruins of the underground city. We've recovered 17 artifacts, she reported, displaying images on the massive screen behind her. Each one is a piece of technology we're still trying to understand. But we've made progress. The refugees left us more than a warning. They left us a legacy. She clicked to the next image. It showed a device, sleek and alien, glowing with soft blue light. This is what we're calling a dimensional scanner. It can detect weak points in reality, places where the barrier between dimensions is thin, places where other things might break through. The assembly murmured with concern. A delegate from France raised his hand. How many weak points have you found? Sarah took a breath. 23, scattered across the globe. Most are stable, but 3 are showing signs of degradation. We estimate we have between 50 and 100 years before they become critical. 50 years? The delegate's face went pale. That's not enough time. It's more time than the refugees had, Professor Wright interjected. He stood beside Sarah at the podium. They had to work with primitive humans who barely understood fire. We have nuclear physics, quantum mechanics, space travel. We have the foundation they gave us and 5,000 years of our own innovation. We can do this. Another delegate spoke up, this time from China. What exactly are we doing? Building more prisons? More seals? No, Sarah said firmly. We're going to do what the refugees couldn't. We're going to permanently close the weak points. Reinforce reality itself. The dimensional merger we triggered didn't just save us from the nameless ones. It showed us how to manipulate the fabric of space and time. We can use that knowledge to repair the damage. She clicked to another image. This one showed a blueprint. Human and alien design elements merged together. This is Project Sentinel, a network of stations built around each weak point. They'll continuously monitor and reinforce reality. Think of them as lighthouses, keeping the darkness at bay. Yuki stepped forward. But that's just defense. We're also proposing Project Oracle. We've decoded about 40% of the refugee language. Their databases are still intact in the underground city. They contain knowledge about the universe that could advance humanity by thousands of years. Medicine, energy, space travel, even information about other civilizations they encountered before they came here. Are those civilizations still out there? Someone asked. We don't know, Yuki admitted. But we intend to find out. The refugees had faster than light travel. Once we understand it, we can send expeditions to their home world. See if anything survived. Look for others who might be fighting the same battle we are. Marcus spoke next, his voice excited despite the serious topic. We've also made a breakthrough with the pillar material. We can't create it yet, but we can work with what we have. The 4 pillars are intact, just dormant. We believe we can reactivate them, but safely this time. Use them as power sources. A single pillar could provide clean, unlimited energy for an entire continent. The assembly erupted in questions. Sarah raised her hand for silence. I know this is overwhelming, she said. 6 months ago, we didn't even know these things existed. Now we're talking about reshaping reality and traveling to other stars. But here's what you need to understand. We're not alone in the universe. We never were, and the universe is far more dangerous than we imagined. But it's also full of possibility. The refugees sacrificed everything to give us this chance, to give us time. We can't waste it. She paused, letting her words sink in. Every nation here needs to contribute. This isn't about politics or borders anymore. This is about species survival. We need scientists, engineers, soldiers, teachers, everyone. We need to build a global defense network. We need to advance our technology. We need to prepare for what's coming, what is coming. The French delegate asked quietly. Sarah looked at the screen behind her. It showed an image recovered from the refugee database. A star map, dozens of highlighted points, some marked with symbols that translated roughly to safe. Others marked with symbols that meant compromised or lost. Other weak points, she said. Not just on Earth, throughout the galaxy. The refugees were fighting a war across multiple dimensions, a war they were losing. They sealed the Nameless Ones here because this was their last stand. But the Nameless Ones aren't the only threat in the void. There are others. The refugees encountered at least 7 different hostile entities. Some tried to break through into reality. Others existed between dimensions, preying on civilizations that traveled between stars. The room fell silent. But, Professor Wright said, his voice strong and certain, the refugees also found allies. Other civilizations fighting the same battle, some more advanced than they were. There's a network out there, a coalition of species working to protect reality from what lurks in the void. The refugees lost contact with them when they sealed themselves here with the Nameless Ones, but they left us coordinates, ways to reach out, ways to join the fight. Sarah smiled for the first time in the presentation. We're not alone, and we're not defenseless. We have a choice. We can hide here on Earth, defending our one weak point, hoping nothing else breaks through. Or we can take the fight to them, use what the refugees gave us, expand, explore, find the coalition and add our strength to theirs. A delegate from Brazil stood. You're proposing we become a spacefaring civilization, not for exploration or resources, but for war. Not war, Sarah corrected. Defense, protection. Yes, we need to go to space. Yes, we need to build weapons and shields and learn to fight threats we can barely imagine. But we'll also meet new friends, learn new things, become something more than we are. The refugees didn't just leave us tools. They left us a mission, to protect reality itself. And that's bigger than any one nation or planet. The Assembly voted. It took 3 days of debate, negotiation, and compromise. But in the end, every nation agreed. Project Sentinel was approved. Project Oracle received funding. And Project Horizon, the initiative to reach out to the coalition, was given top priority. Humanity was going to the stars. 1 year after the awakening, Sarah stood in the Gobi Desert again. The research station had been transformed into a massive complex. Scientists from every country worked side by side. The pillar that had been 2 kilometers underground now sat in a specially constructed chamber. It hummed softly, generating enough power to run the entire facility. Marcus had been promoted to head of energy research. He was developing ways to replicate the pillar technology. Yuki was leading a team of linguists and cryptographers, working to decode the remaining refugee databases. Professor Wright had become the director of the entire program, and Sarah was preparing for a journey. Are you sure about this? Professor Wright asked. He stood with her at the landing pad where a ship waited. Not an Earth ship, a refugee ship. The last one, buried beneath the underground city, preserved perfectly for 5,000 years. They had restored it over the past 6 months. It was ready to fly, I'm sure, Sarah said. Someone needs to make contact with the coalition. Someone who understands what we found, what we've been through. It's a one-way trip. The ship has faster-than-light capabilities, but we don't know how to navigate properly yet. You'll be gone for years, decades maybe. I know. Sarah looked at the sky. Somewhere up there, other civilizations were fighting the same battle Earth had just won. They needed to know Earth was ready to join them. Besides, I've always wanted to see what's out there. This is my chance. Marcus and Yuki came to see her off. Marcus tried to make jokes, but his voice cracked with emotion. Yuki hugged her tightly. Bring back something amazing, Yuki whispered. And come home safe. I will, Sarah promised. She boarded the ship. The interior was strange, designed for beings taller and more slender than humans. But they had modified it, made it work. The controls had taken months to figure out, but Sarah knew how to fly it now. She powered up the engines. The ship rose silently into the air, hovering on technology that bent gravity itself. Through the view screen, she saw her friends below, saw the research facility, saw the desert stretching to the horizon, saw home. Then she activated the faster-than-light drive. Reality twisted, space folded, and the ship leapt forward, crossing the solar system in seconds. She set course for the coordinates the refugees had left, a journey of 30 light-years, 3 months of travel in the strange faster-than-light dimension. Then she would arrive at what the database called the Assembly, the heart of the coalition, the place where 100 different species gathered to coordinate their defense of reality. As Earth shrank behind her, Sarah thought about everything that had happened. The discovery of the signal, the awakening of the pillars, the door that should never have been opened, the choice to fight rather than run. Humanity had answered the call that should never have been unearthed. And in doing so, they had become something new, something stronger. They had faced the void and survived. They had changed reality itself, and now they were going to change the universe. Sarah smiled as her ship jumped to faster-than-light speed. The stars streaked past. The journey had begun, but back on Earth, deep in the mountains of Tibet, something stirred. A place they hadn't checked yet. A monastery that had stood for 3,000 years, built on top of ruins even older. Monks who had guarded a secret passed down through generations. In the deepest chamber behind doors that hadn't been opened in centuries, a symbol began to glow. The same symbol that had been on the pillars. The same symbol that covered the walls of the underground city. The symbol that meant warning. Because Sarah was right. The weak points on Earth weren't the only ones, and the nameless ones weren't the only threat. 23 weak points had been identified, but the scanner could only detect active ones. There were others, dormant, hidden, waiting, and something was waking them up. In the monastery, an old monk felt the vibration through the stone floor. He had been trained his whole life for this moment. His grandfather had told him the story. His grandfather's grandfather before that. A story passed down for 100 generations. The story of the Watchers, beings who came before the refugees, beings who had built the first seals, who had fought the first wars against the void, and who had left something behind when they disappeared. Something dormant, something that would activate only when humanity was ready, or when something worse than the nameless ones found Earth. The monk walked to the glowing symbol. He placed his hand on it, and he whispered the words he had been taught, the words in a language older than Sumerian, older than any human tongue, the words that meant, "They are coming. Prepare the final defense." The symbol pulsed once, twice, then went dark. In orbit above Earth, satellites detected a strange energy signature. Just for a moment, then it vanished. In the command center, alarms blared. Technicians scrambled to identify the source. Professor Wright received the report and felt ice in his chest. The signature had come from Tibet, from a location they hadn't mapped as a weak point. But it matched the pattern. The same energy, the same frequency. Another pillar had just activated. But this one wasn't built by the refugees. It was older, much older, and whatever it had been designed to seal was about to break free. The silence was ending again, and this time, humanity would face something even the refugees had feared. The real test was about to begin. The end and the beginning. The universe is not silent. It never was. It's screaming. And now finally, humanity has learned to hear. The question is, can we survive what we've heard? Or will our answer to the ancient call be our last words in the cosmic dark?